Imagine handing a machine a raw list of 14 complex proteins. You just walk out of the laboratory and you come back just a little while later.
Yeah, just a matter of hours.
Right. And you find that it has independently designed 9 viable cures for human diseases.
Completely on its own.
Exactly. No human hand-holding. I mean, no prompts along the way. It didn't just, like, calculate chemical properties. It actually reasoned through the scientific method on its own.
Which is wild.
It really is. And today, we are looking at the exact artificial intelligence that just did that.
We really are in uncharted territory now.
We are. So we've got our hands on a really fascinating Spanish language tech analysis today. It's titled Anthropic, Heroes of Villanos, El Dilema del Modelo Claude Fable 5.
Yeah, and for those following along, that translates to Heroes or Villains, the Dilemma of the Claude Fable 5 model.
Which is a heavy title.
Yeah.
So the mission for our deep dive today is to unpack this release for you, because Anthropic internally refers to Fable 5 as a mythological class model.
That terminology alone should tell you something.
Right. And the core question we want to answer for you today is whether we are looking at the dawn of a truly autonomous, world-altering AI, or, well, a digital weapon system that's just been temporarily restrained by a very clever but maybe very fragile high-tech muzzle.
Yeah, the stakes are incredibly high with this one.
Okay, let's unpack this. To start us off, how big of a leap is this really?
Well, to really grasp what we're dealing with, we have to recognize that this completely shatters the scales we've been using. Like, completely.
So it's not just a small upgrade.
No, absolutely not. We're not talking about another incremental update. This isn't, a situation where the AI writes a slightly punchier email or formats a spreadsheet a few seconds faster.
Right, like going from GPT-4 to 4.5 or whatever.
Exactly. The release of a mythological class model is an industry-fracturing moment. It literally forces a total redefinition of how we measure both raw artificial capability and the security architecture required to contain it.
Okay, but before we get into the crazy empirical data on how smart this thing actually is, and the data is crazy, we really have to look at how Anthropic packaged it.
The architecture is so important here.
It is, because the way they are delivering Fable 5 to you, the public, is totally unprecedented. To understand Fable 5, you have to realize it's really only one half of a larger architecture.
It's like it has a split personality.
Yeah. Fable 5 has a twin. A restricted, highly weaponized twin called Claude Mythos 5.
And we need to be clear here. We are talking about the exact same underlying neural network.
The brains are identical.
Yes, the base intelligence is identical. But Mythos 5 is kept locked away on secure U.S. government servers. It operates within this highly classified initiative called Project Glasswing.
Which sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It really does. But it is the unfiltered veteran of the digital world. It is, for all intents and purposes, a literal cyber weapon. Mythos 5 is fully capable of offensive hacking, writing zero-day exploits from scratch, and even, and this is the scary part, designing highly lethal synthetic bioweapons.
Let me just define that really quickly for you. A zero-day exploit is a software vulnerability that the creator of the software doesn't even know exists yet, meaning there is zero time to patch it.
It's the holy grail for hackers.
Right. And this AI can just write them on demand. The source notes that the capacity for this kind of profound global damage is built directly into its weights.
Yes.
And just to ground that for a second, when you say weights, you're talking about the actual mathematical connections in the AI's brain, like the core programming, not just a surface-level behavioral rule.
Precisely. The knowledge of how to exploit a server or synthesize a pathogen isn't like a text file you can just delete.
It's not a plugin.
No.
Yeah.
It is woven into the billions of mathematical parameters, the weights that make the AI intelligent in the first place.
All right.
If you surgically remove its mathematical ability to understand how a virus infects a human cell, you simultaneously destroy its ability to cure that infection. The intelligence is intrinsically intertwined.
So they were kind of stuck.
Yeah. Anthropic faced a massive dilemma. How do you release this to the public without handing everyone a weapon of mass destruction? They couldn't alter the core brain, so instead they built a trap door.
The trapdoor. So this router concept, if I'm understanding the source correctly, the system is essentially acting as a middleman that intercepts your prompt.
Exactly.
So if I ask Fable 5 to do something dangerous, let's say I type in keywords related to offensive cyber defense or protein synthesis, the system doesn't just say, I'm sorry, as an AI, I can't do that.
Right. That's the old way.
Instead, it secretly routes my query away from the Mythos brain, down to a completely different much less capable model. Specifically, Claude Opus 4.8, is that right?
Yes. What's fascinating here is the architectural philosophy behind that router.
How so?
Well, Opus 4.8 is a highly competent model, but it is fundamentally mathematically incapable of executing the catastrophic damage that the Mythos-based model can.
It just doesn't have the horsepower.
Right. Anthropic decided that the only way to safely release a mythological class intelligence was to surround it with a digital middle manager.
I love that comparison.
Thanks. The second the context gets dangerous, that middle manager panics and secretly hands the phone to a junior employee.
It's like Ferrari selling you an absolute monster of a supercar. Right, you're sitting in the leather seats, admiring the engineering, but the second you push the pedal to the floor to see what it can really do,
The engine vanishes.
exactly, it magically turns into a sensible four-cylinder Fiat.
That's a great way to look at it.
But wait, if I'm paying a premium for Fable 5, and I ask a complex question, and the system secretly swaps me to a lesser model without explicitly telling me, that doesn't feel like a safety feature.
I know, it feels a bit deceptive.
It feels like a massive bait and switch. You think you're talking to Einstein, but you're actually talking to Einstein's moderately bright cousin.
That tension is exactly what cybersecurity analysts are debating right now. Anthropic argues it is the ultimate dynamic safety feature.
How do they justify it?
They say you get the unbridled genius of Einstein for 99% of your benign tasks. And the system only steps in to protect the global infrastructure when you cross a specific threshold.
I mean, I get the logic.
Yeah.
But that router requires a massive amount of engineering. Which kind of brings us to why they built this complex Ferrari to Fiat system in the first place.
Because the model is just too smart.
Yeah, the raw power of that shared Mythos and Fable-based model is so advanced, it literally breaks our traditional testing benchmarks.
We can't even test it the normal way.
No, we are completely out of the realm of testing if an AI can write a Python script or pass the bar exam. The peer-reviewed data in the source shows we are now testing industrial-scale execution.
The jump in sheer operational capacity is just staggering.
Let's look at the Stripe case from the source. Stripe had a legacy monolith of 50 million lines of Ruby code.
Which is huge.
For any engineering manager listening, you know that migrating a 50 million line code base is an absolute nightmare.
Oh yeah, it's brutal.
That is an army of human engineers working grueling hours for at least 2 months. But Fable 5 executed the entire migration in one single day.
It's unbelievable, and we really need to look at the mechanism of how it accomplished that, because it wasn't just, typing faster than a human.
Right, it's not just speed.
No, it comes down to working memory and massive context windows. Migrating 50 million lines of code means you have to understand industrial-scale dependencies.
Meaning how one piece connects to another.
Exactly. If I change a variable in a function on line 400, I need to know exactly how that alters the math in a totally different module on line 48 million.
And a human physically cannot hold that entire architectural map in their head at once.
But Fable 5 can. Its context window allows it to digest and map the entire system simultaneously. It demonstrates a level of systemic comprehension that biological brains simply aren't wired for.
And that systemic comprehension extends beyond code, too. The biological autonomy test gave me chills.
The protein one.
Yeah. Going back to what we talked about at the top of the deep dive,
Yeah.
They did an internal test with the unfiltered version, Mythos 5. They gave it 14 distinct protein targets.
And here's where we move from a reactive tool to an active agent. The AI utilized what we call agentic loops.
Right. It didn't just spit out a chemical formula and stop. It looked at the targets, independently chose the binding sites, and booted up third-party design tools on its own.
Which is already impressive.
But the craziest part is what happened when things broke. When its own software failed, or through an error code, the AI didn't stop and wait for a human scientist to prompt it with a fix.
It didn't need us.
It debugged its own failures. It read the error, hypothesized the solution, rewrote its own code, and ran the test again.
That is the agentic loop in action. It is the scientific method, completely automated and accelerated.
Wow.
The AI acts, evaluates the result, adjusts its strategy, and acts again. The end result was 9 out of 14 viable drug candidates, achieved entirely in a vacuum.
That's insane.
It possesses the exact workflow, problem-solving capability, and resilience of a senior human researcher.
And yet, with all this godlike analytical capability, the source highlights a seemingly bizarre data point. Anthropic used the video game Pokemon Fire Red to benchmark the model.
Yeah, that caught a lot of people off guard.
It beat the game with a minimal harness, When I first read that, I thought, okay, my 10-year-old nephew beat Pokemon. Why are the smartest machine learning engineers in the world using a retro Game Boy game to test a senior researcher level AI?
It sounds totally absurd on the surface, but beating Pokemon is actually a massive milestone in artificial reasoning.
Really?
Think
How?
about previous AI triumphs like chess or Go. Those games are mathematically bounded environments. You can see the entire board, and the AI simply calculates the statistical probability of the next best move.
Right, you don't have to remember what happened 3 hours ago in chess.
Exactly. But Pokemon is entirely different. It requires temporal memory and delayed gratification.
Because it's an open world.
Yes. You have to walk your character around a map, remember where a locked door was located 3 hours ago, manage a limited inventory of items, and intentionally level up specific characters for a boss battle you won't actually fight until tomorrow.
Oh, wow. Didn't think about it like that.
Beating that game proves that Fable 5 can formulate a long-term goal, hold it in its memory, and successfully execute thousands of sequential micro-decisions over a long period of time to achieve it.
That's a huge deal.
It bridges the gap between answering a single prompt and executing a complex, multi-step life objective. It's demonstrating traits we previously thought were exclusive to biological life.
Okay, so we have an AI that holds entire corporate code bases in its working memory, operates agentic loops to cure diseases, and executes long-term autonomous plans with delayed gratification.
Sounds perfect, right?
You would think this is the ultimate everyday tool. But when Fable 5 actually moves from the pristine laboratory into the real world, and you can see this in the user reactions exploding all over your feed, there's a massive catch.
Yeah, there is. Because that kind of systemic, deep reasoning requires an incredible amount of computational friction.
The speed data proves it. We're all so used to instant gratification from our technology,
Oh, absolutely.
You ask a normal AI model a question, and 1.6 seconds later, the text is flowing down your screen.
Very snappy.
But Fable 5 does not do that. When you ask it a question, it just sits there.
It thinks.
It ruminates. It takes an average of 9.4 seconds just to start responding, and for complex tasks, users are waiting up to 50 seconds.
Which is a lifetime. It's helpful to borrow a concept from human psychology here, the difference between System 1 and System 2 thinking.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. System 1 is your fast automatic reflex. If I ask you what 2 plus 2 is, you don't calculate it, you just know it's 4.
Right.
Previous AI models were essentially operating on System 1. They were incredibly fast at predicting the most likely next word in a sequence.
Just reacting.
Exactly. But System 2 is when you have to stop, pull out a whiteboard, and map out the logic of a complex calculus problem.
And that's what Fable 5 is doing.
Yes. Fable 5 operates heavily in System 2. It is mapping out the logical architecture of the entire multi-step answer before it generates a single word. That depth is revolutionary, but it requires a staggering amount of server compute power.
Which perfectly explains why Anthropic is putting such an aggressive paywall on this. The economics are astronomically expensive.
Very.
Fable 5 costs $10 per million input tokens and a staggering $50 per million output tokens.
Which adds up incredibly fast.
And for context for you listening, a token is essentially a piece of a word. So $50 to generate a few hundred pages of text might not sound crazy for a human writer, but for an AI making thousands of micro-decisions, those costs compound instantly.
It's definitely not cheap.
Furthermore, the source note's a hard cutoff. Starting June 23rd, Fable 5 is vanishing from all flat-rate, all-you-can-eat monthly subscriptions. It becomes strictly pay-per-use.
A huge shift in their business model.
So what does this all mean? Are we just creating an elite tier of artificial intelligence? Is Anthropic practically ensuring that only massive enterprise corporations can afford to play with the real brain while the average person is stuck with the fiat?
That is the sociological shift we are witnessing right now. Up until this point, the tech industry has treated AI somewhat like a remarkably clever consumer toy.
Right, like a chatbot to help you write a polite email to your landlord or to generate a quick recipe.
Exactly. Fable 5 fundamentally shatters that paradigm. This is not designed for casual emails. It is heavy-duty industrial infrastructure.
That makes sense.
You don't buy a massive industrial construction crane to plant a single flower in your backyard.
You'd use a trowel.
Right. Fable 5 is the crane. It shifts the epicenter of AI from a consumer novelty to a strict enterprise necessity. It carries a heavy price tag because it isn't just generating text. It's effectively replacing entire departments of human capital.
That's a powerful way to put it. But even if you are an enterprise corporation and you can afford the 50 seconds of compute time, and you can afford those sky-high token costs,
There's still a catch.
the source reveals that the very safety mechanism that allows Fable 5 to exist might be its most frustrating flaw.
Yes. The router we discussed, that digital middle manager, is far from perfect.
It has a 5% false positive rate. They call it the dumb security guard problem,
Such a fitting name.
isn't it? Imagine you are a legitimate biologist at a pharmaceutical company. You are researching a cure for a specific type of cancer.
Okay.
You type a highly technical prompt into Fable 5, but because your terminology vaguely resembles the chemical building blocks of a synthetic pathogen, the Fable 5 security guard panics.
It triggers the trapdoor.
Exactly. It flags your prompt as a bioweapon threat, and without telling you, it dumps your query down to the Opus 4.8 model. It's like a bouncer at a nightclub who's been told to keep out anyone wearing a red shirt to stop gang members, but ends up tackling a paramedic who shows up in a red uniform to treat someone.
Exactly. So you, the expert user, are suddenly receiving an answer from an inferior mathematical model that simply doesn't have the scientific depth you require.
Which ruins the whole point of using it.
Right. The guardrail designed to protect global infrastructure is actively hindering the very scientific progress the model was built to accelerate. It's a blunt instrument trying to perform brain surgery.
And from a pure cybersecurity standpoint, it gets worse. Because it's not just a frustrating user experience. The whole safety system might be a structural illusion.
This is where it gets really alarming.
The source highlights a devastating critique from cybersecurity experts, specifically Andrew Rubin, the CEO of Lumio.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Rubin is pointing out a fundamental architectural truth about AI safety that the industry is, frankly, trying to ignore.
He warns that putting guardrails on the user interface, building this clever router that swaps out the model based on your prompt, does not change the underlying math of the neural network.
Right. When we talk about AI architecture, we have to separate the interface layer from the base model layer.
Right, the chat window versus the brain.
Exactly. The interface layer is the chat window you type into. The base model layer contains the mathematical weights, the actual intelligence. Anthropic put a very heavy padlock on the interface.
But sophisticated attackers don't care about the interface.
They don't. State-sponsored hackers don't fight the user interface. They don't sit at a keyboard and try to trick the router with clever words. They target the base model directly.
Because Mythos 5 and Fable 5 are the exact same brain. The knowledge of how to build a bioweapon or execute a zero-day hack is sitting right there in those mathematical connections.
It's all there.
Fable 5 just has a piece of software telling it to look the other way. Rubin's critique is chilling. If the raw weights of Mythos 5 ever leak, if a rogue employee copies them onto a drive or a server gets breached, the entire elaborate multi-million-dollar safety router of Fable 5 becomes instantly useless.
Just evaporates.
It becomes a high-tech paperweight.
The lock on the door only works if the door is the only way into the building. If the weights leak, the walls of the building disappear entirely.
It's terrifying.
Anyone with enough server compute power could run the raw, unfiltered Mythos 5 locally on their own hardware, completely bypassing Anthropic's dumb security guard router. The intelligence would be out in the wild permanently.
It is wild to think about the fragility of that setup. Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, we need to synthesize what Anthropic has actually achieved here.
Because it is historic.
On a purely technical level, it is a monumental leap. Fable 5 scores a massive 20 points higher than GPT 5.5 in coding benchmarks. It is the first AI that demonstrably possesses the common sense to know when it is being evaluated in a test environment versus operating in the real world.
They achieved a true paradigm shift in commercial AI. They successfully separated an AI's intrinsic capacity from its programmed intention.
Which is brilliant, really.
It is. They managed to take the intellectual equivalent of a heat-seeking homing missile, package it up, and sell it to the enterprise public as a cordless drill, simply by changing the instruction manual and adding a very strict safety switch.
They looked at the dilemma. Do we make this incredibly powerful tool useful for everyone or safe for everyone? And they chose safe. At least for now.
Yeah.
For now. But here's where it gets really interesting, and I want you to think about this as you go about your day. History shows us, without fail, that every single technological castle eventually gets a crack in its walls.
It's inevitable.
Data wants to be free. Server leaks happen. State-sponsored hacks happen. If the entire safety of our global digital infrastructure and potentially our biological security now relies entirely on the secret underlying mathematical weights of Mythos 5 never ever leaking out of Anthropic's servers,
It's a big if.
what exactly is our backup plan for the day that they inevitably do? It seems Anthropic built a brilliant, world-class muzzle, but muzzles can slip, and the intelligence is already fully formed.
Sobering reality to leave on.
It really is. Until next time, keep questioning the tools you use.